Okay, welcome to episode 4 of the DWRD stationary feed. On today's show, we have Darrell Davis, owner of D Squared Arts. Darrell, thanks for taking some time to talk. Why don't you start out by just, you know, introducing yourself and telling a brief overview of what D Squared Arts is, and then we'll get into our standard questions, and then get back in and focus on D Squared Arts specific questions after that. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thanks for having
Okay.
me on, Derek. So D Squared Arts is my overview of my art business, I guess you could say. I do sculpture, ceramics. That was my main focus before I started working in pens. I work in commission paintings and pen and ink drawings that are they're not technical drawings. They're more of like a scribble, free flowing type of figures. So that's kind of the premise of D Squared Arts. I'll do anything. I get bored real easy, and so I just like to try things out. Like I have a foundry, and I'll pour metals. Right now, just into ingots, not sculptures. So but yeah, I also have ADD. So if I go off on a tangent, just bring me back in. So,
No, that's great. Metalworking is interesting. Who knows? Maybe you'll end up making your own nibs at some point.
mhm.
That would be cool to make a pin and a nib that you could put on a normal housing or something. So that's really cool. The metalwork and the home foundry type stuff.
Mhm.
So, as we get started, here's just a couple of standard questions that I've been asking all the guests to kind of level set so people can see if they have similar preferences to you or things like that. So, for the first question, what got you into the pen and stationery hobby, and around how long ago was that?
So some people might know him, Sean Newton of Newton Pens. We went to college together, and he started making pens 12, 15 years ago. Can't remember how long ago it was. And he tried to talk me into making blanks for him early on. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that, Uh, and he finally started, talking me into making them blanks. And I just kind of liked the pens um, because there was something that you could hold. And I always want to touch sculptures, and you're not allowed to touch a lot of different artworks, especially if they're in a museum or something like that. So that's kind of what got me started in hand carving my pens, because I want someone to be able to touch my work and feel like they can actually touch it and not be scared of it. Um, like I'll be honest with you, I would love to see one of the pens that I've made come back 20 years from now and be all like worn down and scuffed up, and not be perfect, and show that someone used it, and just have that quality of a worn piece. So uh
No,
basically Sean got me into it,
okay,
long
I
story
definitely
short.
appreciate that. I love patina. Like I dabbled in making journal covers. So when I met Sean,
Mhm.
it was vending the Arkansas show about, I think it was 2015 or 2016, and my friend hand binds books, and I made journal covers because I dabbled in leather work. Because
Mhm.
I'm very similar to what you say. I pick up new hobbies. I kind of collect hobbies, and what the pen and the photography are things that kind of span multiple hobbies. So they've
Mhm.
kind of stuck around longer than others. But I have an original journal cover I made, and actually Sean has one he bought from me that he keeps over his workbench. And just that patina where you spin in your pocket every day, or like a
Mhm.
veggie tan leather or something. I love that. So that would be really cool to see one of your pins over time. But I can also see where someone's going to baby your pin because they literally are works of art. And they're going to be in a pin sleeve and protected, so they're not going to
Mhm.
get that kind of patina. They're going to get the luxury treatment in a nice
Yes.
padded case. So
Yes, I have noticed that. I mean, I have to give Sean credit, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be able to do this. He allows me to use his machines and things to make the blocks that I carve out of. But so if I mention him a lot, it's because of that. But he is always like, make sure you're putting felt down, like make sure they're not rolling on the ground, like don't scratch them up. And I'm like, kind of like the Chad at Ills and Inks, I think is the name of his
Eel and
business.
Anchor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like he stirs his coffee with his pen and stuff and sends it to Sean. So it's just kind of interesting, kind of pick on him a little bit. But so.
Well, and that's funny because Jonathan Brooks, the Carolina, whenever he's at a pin show, he just dumps a box of pins out on the table. And so
Hmm.
I guess every maker kind of has their own view on things. Some want them to be, a little bit of anarchy of pouring on the table or, in cases. But
Hmm.
so along pins, do you write with a fountain pen? What do you have inked?
So I have what both of the pins that I have are Newton pins. I have the Arkansas uh, pin show pin from 2 years ago because I made the blanks for them and was able to get one of the less ornate ones from that pin show. And then I have another one that was the second one that Sean made for me because I bugged him so much. He made me one, and he calls it the bug pin. And I'll show it to you. He really got frustrated with me, and he started gluing together scraps, and then he made this pin that has all these different angles and stuff on it. And when I
No, I
take it to
love that. That's
shows,
great.
yeah, everyone's like, "Where'd you get that pin?" And I'm like, "He made it. You need to tell him to make another one because he's like, I'll never make another one of those." So, but yeah, that's the one that's inked up right now, the bug pin, and it's with can never pronounce it right. Diamine, I think is the name.
Diamine.
Yeah,
Diamine, that's how I've normally heard it said, but or
and
diamine.
it's burnt sienna is what it is. I really like the way that um, Silver Point looks, which is from like the 1400s. It's that really like brownish faded color. Um, and that's the closest thing that I could find at the time when I really started doing this. It actually looks nothing like it, but I just like the brown color of it, like the reddish tint.
Yeah.
I've actually got some samples from Octopus Inks. She gave me some at the show that are more of a gray color that I'm going to try out to see. I don't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but
No, that's really cool. Lisa's always great for giving out samples and being like an ink encyclopedia because you can say, "Oh, I like this. Well, have you tried this and this and this and this that are all very similar with her magical book of
mm-hmm,
swatches?" So that's very cool because that's actually, you know, at the pin show, I was so busy going around and looking at everything, it's hard to kind of thing. But when I saw the pin she got from you, I was like, "Where is that from? I want to go over there." So that's when we briefly talked at the show, asking,
mm-hmm.
"Hey, would you be interested in doing this in the future?" And once again, thanks for doing it because that pin is so unique, and it's just, well, I'll definitely put links to Darrell's website and also to some pictures Lisa has posted of hers. It's that pin is just like a functional work of art, and it's great.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
no, it's just so unique. You don't see that, and that's one thing I love. I like pins that are different. I don't. There's some pins I like having the pin that everybody has, like a Pilot 823 or something. But I'm getting to the point where I want maker pins, and I want them to be quirky. I want them to be
Mm-hmm.
different. I don't want to have the same pin as everybody else. And yours are just you know the hand carved. I didn't even know that was a thing, and now I'm like, oh, I want to see more of those because it's just so unique. So, and you kind of already touched on ink. So, what about paper? Do you just use normal paper? Or are you getting into with your art background? Do you use art papers or just kind of a mixture?
Yeah, most of my work is done in sketchbooks or note cards. I love to work on note cards. I like the line side and then the blank side on the other ones, and then I can put it in things. So just a standard line note card is what I write on a lot, or sketch things out on, or you know, depending on what sketchbook I'm working in, whether it's a Canson or just one from Walmart, whatever brand that is, or something someone's given me. I don't have a particular paper that I use. So,
Okay. So I know we haven't spoken all that much before this interview, but I did a video a while back on fountain pen friendly index cards, and I discovered these through my local shop. They're dot grid, but the dot grid is really light,
mm-hmm.
and they're a thicker index card, and they're fountain pen friendly. So you can write on it, and I'll send you a link after, and I'll put it in the show notes, a link to that video, because I looked at the Levenger cards, the Natsu, which are these, and the Exacompta, and Vanessa sells the Exacompta, and I think she's getting in the Levenger as well, but I love index cards.
Yeah.
I like carrying them around. I actually have this little sleeve that'll hold like one on the front and a couple of
Mm-hmm.
spares in the back and a pin loop. This is what I carry around the house for like lists or stuff like that. Because I
Yeah.
also have little notebooks, but there's something about writing on an index card, being able to file them. Because I actually have here our notes for this show, all the stuff I needed to do, and the Natsu system has a little box so you can
Uh-huh.
sort like stuff that's done, stuff that's pending, and it's got a little stand. So this is what I keep on my desk, and
Mm-hmm.
this is now all for the recording and interviews. There's a card for each person I've done and what I want to do. So big fan of index cards. I'll definitely put the link to that video because that's something that for many years I never could find a good index card that you could
Mm-hmm.
write on with a good pen and it didn't bleed through or
Yeah.
get messy. So that seems to be gaining some popularity. Um, so then, my last of my kind of standard questions, since you're more on the art side, but this is something I think that applies to everybody. What's your favorite stationary adjacent item? And by that I mean a bag, a case, a book weight. What's your favorite stationary adjacent item that you use with stuff, but it's not necessarily, textbook stationary?
Yeah. Hmm. Probably just like a standard pen holder, um, like a cup, something that I've made, that's probably a second, like I would probably never sell it because it's got a crack in it or something along those lines. That I would say that's probably my go-to is something that I've made, like to hold the pins so that I can find it
Yeah,
because I lose stuff a lot too. So
no, that makes perfect sense. And that's I'm always intrigued because most artists, when they say it's a second, I have a feeling that if you handed it to somebody, they're not going to see that flaw. Because I remember that when doing leather stuff. Oh, I can't. Someone's going to be paying money for this. I can't. I
mm-hmm.
need to restart over because there's this one little thing here that no one's going to see, but I'm going to see it, and it's going
Yeah.
to, look like a splotch of black paint in the middle of a white wall. But
Mm-hmm.
um, so So now that we've kind of gotten those out of the way, let's talk about D squared arts. You said you started as an artist and you are an artist, and that was how you got started. But, you know, kind of talk through, you said you went to school for it and you already touched on this a little bit, but just kind of talk about your background and, what type of arts you prefer, what's your preferred mediums and some of that kind of stuff, which ultimately led to, the functional pin art that is how I came across you know you, so we could even be having this interview.
Yeah. So like a long time ago, I went to school for architecture and engineering, and long story short, I got sick, had to move back home, change my major to graphic design, um, transferred schools, blah blah blah. Like realized you didn't actually need a degree in order to be a graphic designer. So I went to work for a local printing company, did that for a little bit. And then I got tired of doing changes for people and then not realizing that my time was worth something. And so I decided to go back to school, and I became an art teacher. And that's where I met Sean when we were doing that. So that's when I got my degree in sculpture and ceramics, and have a non-traditional license master's to be able to teach in Arkansas. And then um, so I was teaching. I always told my kids, like, hey, if you're going to do this, it's a lot of luck. It's a lot of like who like if you're going to do your artwork, just be prepared to make some money one month and then no money the next month. And um, my my single dad raised my daughter, and I've always wanted to be an artist, like just a like an artist, and so I couldn't afford to have the uh, make money this month, no money next month. I needed something, so that's one of the reasons why I went into education. I loved education. I loved teaching kids and stuff. Um, just it was time for me to move on, and so that's when I really focused on making pen blanks for Sean. Like that was the movement towards that, and then my ceramics and paintings and things like that. Just doing things for friends, getting my name out there, and so that's where it all started. Through all of that, my ideas came from that. Now, where did the hand shaped and sculpted pins come from? It's twofold. I'm really, um, I guess, loyal would be the word to say. And the one thing that I didn't want to do if I got into the market was compete directly with Sean. Um, he's been in it for a long time and has a really good following and a stable business and everything. But I really didn't want to have something that was similar to him. And then the other part is like um, making the pin itself, the connecting pieces and things like that. At that particular time, I did not have the means to actually make them, but he did. And so uh, getting the pieces made through him um, takes time away from his work. And so I wasn't about to be like, hey, I want to make this pen using your machines, that type of thing. So that's where the hand shaping came from, uh, like the thought of it. But I really like touching what I'm making. Um, I love using the sandpaper and the rasp and taking the pen and like just feeling around it as I'm carving it and things like that, getting the feel of it. Like, how is this going to feel in this person's hand? If my hand was a little bit smaller, is this too big for it? Like that thought process is really big as I'm making it, because I'm a lot of times I'm thinking about a specific like uh type of person, really isn't the word, but a specific you know feeling for the pen. uh Small hand, big hand, is it like grandiose and it's just there to be sitting on the desk and someone come up and talk about it, like you never really use it, but just because it's so big and gaudy and everything, it's just there and people like to look at it, that
Yeah.
type of thing.
No,
So
and that makes sense. And since Sean started out by bugging you to make blanks, it's an interesting story there because you've got someone who was also, if you don't, for those who don't know Sean's kind of rough story, he was a school teacher, started making pens for the side, and then the pen thing took off to the level that became his day job. He stopped
mhm.
teaching, but then he still does his scholarship and whatnot. So
Yeah,
it's interesting that he was able to, in some ways, pull you along with him
yeah.
inadvertently, by doing the blanks. Now, um, two questions about the blanks. For your carving, do you have to make a larger than what would be a standard blank? like the pen that Lisa got from you, it's a larger by the time the cylinder would have started larger or the square, depending on how you started it, to be able to carve it down to where it's pin-ish sized. So do
Mm-hmm.
you have to make a larger than normal blank than you'd find through another blank maker?
Not necessarily. I've got a couple blanks here. I'll just kind of show them if um, try to get them
Just
in
one
the.
note, if you're listening to this on audio only, the video version will be on YouTube where you can see what Darrell's holding up for blanks. Just wanted to throw that mention in there.
So this is a glow stick blank. Part of it glows in the dark, but it's 3/4 inches by roughly 8.5 inches, and so this is taken, put into the CNC machine, and it's carved down into 3 other pieces. And so this is it looks almost exactly like it, but I'm going to take it apart. And so I've got the cap, got to do some sanding. The cap, the oh my gosh,
Section.
section. Thank you. And then the barrel. So all of these pieces are made through the CNC machine, and then I put it together, and almost all of it is shaped while it's together, like this.
Okay.
And so, like this piece, I'll just start carving it down. I'll draw on it to kind of get an idea of what it is. A lot of times, I will look at the colors and the way that they flow, and I'll be like, okay, this one probably will look better as a twisted pin. This one will look better as a somewhat traditional shaped pin. Like I have 12 different models so far. And I say models loosely because like they're not the same. It's not like getting, the exact same shape off from a lathe where you're
Yeah.
measuring it, that type of thing. They're a general shape that I came up with in the beginning, and then each one is kind of a progression from there. Different things, like letting the blank kind of dictate how it develops. Because I might make one thinner because of the way that the blank shows a specific color, or it's got a dot in it that works really well with that thin shape. But then make the same beginning shape in another one, but it needs to be fatter because the colors are like striated or something like that. So,
Yeah.
but
No, that's now a follow up question for you.
mhm.
Do you pour blanks intentionally? So, say you're going to make one of the twisted pins like Lisa Olive Octopus got.
Mhm.
Do you pour a blank with a certain color palette, knowing that you're going to be doing that has a more uniform color scheme versus something that's a random mix? Some resins and blanks you see, and
Mhm.
the colors, you don't really know what you're going to get, especially once you turn it down some. So, do you make blanks with that in mind, knowing your end goal of how you plan to roughly form it? Um, or do you just kind of take your chances depending on which blank you pick up that day when you're ready to start making a new pen?
So the funny thing about that is that I just did that this last time. So the one that I picked up, that's the pieces. This blue is a solid blue, and it is for a specific reason. I've got blue, yellow, and green that I made, and so those colors are for specific things. Everything else that I've made before this were just blanks that I had, and I liked the way that the colors like went through the blank, and working with the blanks and knowing how I pour them, I can get an idea of kind of how the material is going to be twisted throughout. It's not like an exact science or anything like that, but I can kind of tell like, okay, this particular mica is pushed to the outside of the blank, so I'm going to lose it the further in I get into the blank. So I'll know that I probably only have like 1/8 of an inch, so I might not even get that color, and it's going to go more towards the red color that's in between. And so as I'm working it, I know that, and I'll make changes to my design um, to be able to accent things, show things like that. So
Okay. And then, so for those who've never seen your pins or held one thing that most people will notice is that your pins, because of how you carve them, seem like they unscrew a little bit longer screw.
yes,
Is that so that when someone's holding it, they have a more natural section and it tapers before the actual kind of main artistically formed body? Is that by design, or is that something you kind of came across, over time to realize I want to do this particular type of carving, but in order to do that, I need to elongate the section or do like a single start? Because do you do single start threads on yours?
no, I don't. The original threads that I had, it's actually 10 turns to open them up, which is kind of annoying to some people because they just like a quick, twist and they can start writing with it. Part of the reason for that is like I really want someone to fill the pin. That's a very like far out there understanding of it, but that is part of it, like to have to work with it um, intentionally. But the main thing is as I'm working with it, there's so much tension on it to be able to carve um, that it kind of loosens the threads up a little bit. And I really don't want someone with the pin in their pocket or something like that and it to come undone. Like you're going to have to work at it for it to come undone. And so uh, that's primarily the reason is I want it to stay closed. I have had a lot of people that were like, I just don't like that you have to, turn it so much. So I've kind of backed off. I have some that are 6 and 7 turns. I'm just really like apprehensive about making it like a 2 or 3 turn just because it might be tight, but as soon as that tightness like opens up, it'll spin. And
Yeah.
I don't want it to like come open in someone's purse or in their bag or something like that. So
No, and I mean, there's production pins like the Opus 88 pins because they're only eyedropper. They have more threads, and that makes sense. And yours, when I was first holding the one from Lisa at the show, and I was like, I can't, that pin is so well made, you can't see the seam between the cap and the body. And one way that you're able to do that, and you've explained it, is because you're carving it, having that longer screw length, the threads are set further up, so you can really get a file or a rasp or whatever in there to do the art part. So, you know, yes, it might not be for everybody, but I liked it, and it because of that longer, it felt natural holding it, even though that pin and to describe this pin, if someone's just listening to audio, if you think of like a tree limb that has a vine growing around it and the tree itself, or like an old man's walking stick, you see it commonly in that kind of art,
mm-hmm.
is that a vine is wrapped around a limb, and when the vine is taken away, it leaves indents. And that's what this pin that we're just talking about now is. It's as if someone took a vine, wrapped it around this piece of resin, and then remove the vine, and that's how the carving is done. And when it's closed, you cannot see the seam in the middle, which is awesome. That's why it that pin really caught my eye, because I was like, wait, it almost looks like a blank that hasn't been like turned into a pin yet, because you really don't see the seam, and that's something you don't see on pins. Most 3-piece pins, you're gonna tell when that cap ends. The material, because and that's why I was asking if you poured certain materials, because for that style pin, if you had a crazy mix of colors, you might see that seam. So I didn't know if that was, a
Mm-hmm.
planned thing or a happy accident of how that worked out on that pin specifically, and some of the others, you know, for
Yeah.
when, having that kind of seamless transition from cap to body.
Well, like I said earlier, like as I'm working with it, like the blank will dictate like where I go with it. And so um I don't make the blank for that specific reason. Like I might try to. The odds of it actually like working out are probably very slim. Like if I thought, hey, I'm going to do this, But at the same time, when you're cutting out the pieces, the section, the cap and the barrel, like you can look at the blank and be like, okay, I want to turn this blank around so that this black and this black match up.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about the other color because that black matching up and carrying over will be enough visually to accommodate like the idea of what I'm going for.
Okay.
So like there's different tricks that you can do. Um, I do credit my sculpture background and ceramic background. I had two really good instructors in college. I'm going to throw their names out there: Aaron Calvert and then the late Mac Horniker. Those two guys were amazing. All of my teachers in college were amazing, but those two like really helped me 3D wise. So the it's more of like I've done it so much that it just kind of comes. I learned it somewhere, down the road, and it's just become second nature now. Um, and so can't really explain it to per se, but that's how it comes about.
Now, just a off pin topic, just a ceramic. Do you do on a wheel? Or are you doing pouring molds, or a little bit of both? My mom did ceramics when I was growing
Mhm.
up, so we had two kilns in my garage. So we had a wall full of molds and pouring and greenware and all that. So I know enough to be dangerous, but she never did the turning
Mhm.
on a wheel or anything like that. So did you do both, or did you mainly focus on one?
So I do have a will. I don't really like throwing. Like I said, I like to be in there like building it and stuff. So I do slab construction, which is where you take the clay and you roll it out into a thin slab, and then you cut your pieces out and you score and slip them together and make your shapes from that. So like if it's probably a lot harder to do, like to make a round cup out of it, but that's how I like making it. I could probably throw 1,000 of them in the time that I can make 100 slab
Yeah.
construction pieces, but it's just the way that I like to have control over it. So slab construction is the primary method that I use. If I need to throw something to make a particular shape or something like that, I will, but I try to stay away from the will, just because I don't like the interaction with it.
Yeah.
Um, as far as like slip casting goes, I've made some molds myself, like to make generic shapes, and then those molds typically end up being slump molds, where I just take my slabs and lay them down in it and let it create the shape on its own. So primarily slab construction, but I do use the other methods to create things.
And as someone who is not an artist and knows a little bit of ceramics, I've actually done a slab thing once. We have a bonsai store in Nashville, and
Mhm.
the owner proprietor, uh, he got started not just doing the trees, but he makes the pottery. So he's really well known for making the pottery. So he did a class, so my wife and I went and made our own bonsai pots, doing slab, and then having to roll out and fill in the corners to. It
Mhm.
was a whole different world. Thinking, okay, I've done some ceramics as a kid. It's like a whole different
Mhm.
world doing it like that, and getting something square. My thing is not square. It will hold water. It'll hold a plant, but it's functional, but
Mhm.
it's not very pretty. But at the end of when it was all done, because we did that and then we left them there, they dried, and we just kind of picked a glaze color. So he glazed them and fired
Yeah.
them and whatnot. We went and picked them up. But if you've ever dabbled or never have done that, look for someone near you, because it's a whole experience. Making a pot of some sort out of
Mhm.
flat pieces of clay. It's very different, but it's actually kind of fun when you see the finished product saying, "Hey, I actually made that."
Yeah.
It was a unique experience. So, you make the pins, you hand carve them. What of your other ceramics do you make to accompany them? You mentioned earlier like a cup that you use for pin. Do you do pin rest? Do you do other related items that, you kind of sell as a package or sell individually that they can work together with your pins?
So I like to make like functional pieces, like everything I like to make to be functional, which is I think every artist, like ceramic artist, even if they're making like a sculptural piece, they want it to have some function. But so a lot of my pieces up until recently have been like bowls and cups and like decorative centerpieces. Like for all of my family, when they get married, I make a bowl, centerpiece bowl that has their name and like the established date, something personal that they can keep hopefully for a long time. Um, and so that's what my ceramics has primarily been. Recently, I've tried to make like some inkwells. I've had some ideas for that, and I'm really going through the process of making the right kind of pen holder for myself, like something that I like, that I enjoy making. Because most of the time when I'm making stuff, contrary to the pens themselves, which is completely different than my other work, I just make it to create. And if someone likes it, then good. If they don't like it, I made it like to get that expression out. Now the pens themselves, I'm looking for that specific person to get that piece, because I'm not going to keep them. They're not for me. So,
Yeah.
but you know, the as far as like things for the for pins, it's in the works. Just getting it out of my brain is the big issue for me. So,
Now that's neat. I think an inkwell would be really cool because more people are getting into doing art with fountain pen inks. And I don't know if you spoke to Lisa Olive Octopus about that. She does Twitch streams where she uses fountain pen ink to do art
mm-hmm,
and a lot of the swatching and whatnot. So having a handmade inkwell of sorts for like a common ink or like a common color, that would be
mm-hmm,
really cool. Or even if you think I recently started to teach myself watercolor, like
yeah,
a cool little
mm-hmm,
watercolor dish that you could put the different drops in that you're doing the mixing, that would be a cool related item that
mm-hmm,
would be still be custom
yeah,
and could look crazy because it's functional at the end of the day. It needs a
yeah,
little depression, you could put some ink in and some
mm-hmm,
water, and that would be a cool thing to see because once again it's different. Yes, you can go to a craft store and buy $1 little piece of plastic, but it'd be a lot cooler to get a ceramic one that's,
mm-hmm,
you know, handmade, has a cool color, maybe getting a color scheme that matches a pin they got from
mm-hmm,
you or something. So that'd be a really cool thing just to see. And then pin rests, I've seen some other people who do ceramic pin rests and mugs that are related, but then, your own take on it. That's the thing with, ceramics and art. Two artists are going to take the same theme and make it completely different, and most people, they're going to want one of each,
mm-hmm,
so it's
yeah,
it's not really like you're competing with another artist. It's your everybody's art's going to be different, so it's like, you know that's one thing I've seen people in the fountain pen world. If there's an option of choosing one or the other, they're probably going to choose both.
yeah,
They're going to get both because it's different, it's
mm-hmm,
cool, and then it gives variety. Because how many people have 20 or 30 pins? You can only use one at a time,
yeah,
so they're going to be grabbing a different one or a different ink or a different something every day. So you know that's the great thing about what you're doing is you're making unique things that people haven't seen. And whenever they get a chance to see your pins, it's hard to explain in words, but when you see the pictures, it really kind of clicks of, wow, that's a pin
mm-hmm,
that's functional. It's functional art. And you said earlier that everyone is, you have some models ish, but they're never going to be the exact same. They're always going to be slightly different because it's handmade.
mm-hmm,
And that won't be for everybody, but I think there's probably most people who are going to be on the lookout for that kind of unique experience of using that handmade pin. And then what you need to do is make your own signature ink. Get into ink mixing, so you make an ink mixture that goes with the D squared arts ink. That would be a cool side item to
Mhm.
have alongside your
I've
pins at a show.
I've looked into like the process of making ink and things like that because um like I think that I would really like to have a specific color that I use. I don't really like to or I don't really have to have a bunch of different colors. Like if I'm using ink, it's black, it's red, um, it's a brown, those types of colors. And you know, in the past, I've used Conwar rapidograph pens that are more for drafting, like for my technical drawings and drawings like that. It's what I learned on. I like the Pilot V5, like that type of pen to draw with and stuff. So using the fountain pens, uh, I I really am leaning more towards for myself getting uh, the calligraphy type grinds on my pens because I want to have the shape when I write, the thick and the thin and the
Yeah.
scratching as you go across the page, and like I want that as I do that. I think that we need to write more, as a society. I think that it's more personable and, it shows someone that you like maybe care more for them, than just another person where you're typing out an email or something like that. So,
Well, yeah, not just writing. I mean, you know, I'm on Facebook. I've been on there forever. But when it's someone's birthday, if it's one of my closer friends, I'm not going to click on the wish them happy birthday. I'm going to send them a text message at the
yeah.
very least because they're going to be somewhere else. But even just that, it's different. It's more
Mhm.
personable,
Yeah.
because the pin shows, I think, really show that people want to write more. They want to keep journals. They want to
Mhm.
put the pen on the paper. Because, I mean, you ran a table. Think of the age groups of people coming up. You had people who were older, and you had people who were like the kids events, and there's
Mhm.
kids going around getting their little shark pen from doing
Yeah.
their scavenger hunt. Like
Yep.
my friends, they had their son there. It was his first show, and you know, most ball of energy child I've ever met, and they're both kind of laid back. And he already has, I think, two fountain pens, and he's like
Mhm.
6 because both of his parents like it. So
Yeah.
there's that whole other generation, and I think more people are going back to older ways and writing and whatnot. But just to add to the inks, you said your brown ink is not quite exactly what you want. You just need to make the D squared arts brown. You
Mhm.
need to find that brown color because honestly, I think in pens I have right now, I have 3 or 4 browns. You know, that kind of earth tones are really popular in terms of
Mhm.
inks. People like them, and that because there's a ink I have that from what your description, it's making me think, and it's like a supposed to emulate manuscript brown. And then I have another brown I actually haven't swatched. There's a local person in our pen club who makes her own inks out of like walnuts or something like that, I
Oh
think.
wow.
So it's a brown ink
Mhm.
that, is on the shelf to be swatched. So that would be a cool tie-in that's, unique. And that's a whole nother level of art. Mixing
Mhm.
inks to a certain level, you're not going to have your hands in there per se, but it's a different type
Yeah.
of art in its own right.
It's like melting metals, like it's just a different process. But I think, like for me, the thing about art is that like they're all related. Like you can take something from, pouring metals to how to write or use the ink and how it pours or paint and things like they all work, you know, in the same premise as far as like pouring and stuff like that. So it's being able to take the idea that you learn from this and being able to apply it in a different medium is really like the part of the thought process for me.
Now, with your pouring metals, do you have any plans to try and incorporate your metal pouring into your pin blanks? Like adding in a metal port part in line so that when you you have your blank and get it all glued and sealed, and when you do your carving, you'd have metal inlays or rings. Is that on your roadmap or?
So I actually have about 1,000 grams of silver that I really want to do some inlay work with. Um, it's more of the process of actually sitting down and having the time to work with it and actually fail at it so that I understand how it works and not really have something, to see at the end, but to be able to like work towards mastering it so that I could actually put it on a pen. As far as pouring goes, I've really thought about making roll stops with it. Possibly doing some type of different type of clip. The only problem with that is I run into, if I want to continue making my blocks that I carve out of using the CNC machine, then I have to add another process onto that. And without buying a CNC machine, I'm taking up Sean's time. And I have to, like, for me, I have to be really mindful of that because he's allows me to use his machinery when he's not using it. So I just really want to make sure that I'm a good steward of his time and machines. So
It'd be cool also though if you with your pouring metals to turn an ingot into like a like you said a roll stop, like a pin tray, like a metal
mm-hmm.
pin tray,
Yeah.
and that's gonna in turn work for your vision of the pins
Mm-hmm.
because if you're putting the pin on the metal tray, it's not gonna get babied. It's
Yeah.
meant to go on that metal. It's meant to get that ding
Mm-hmm.
here, that patina there. So
Yeah.
that might be something that would be cool as well, just to a one of because you see it in leather, like the little journal, and I'm looking. I don't have it close enough to me, but the one I made for myself, I swear it was on my desk. It has the brand on it,
Yeah.
so most people wouldn't want that, but I was like, oh, that's going to be the one I'm making. So it's a little kind of fold over leather cover, and it's got the brand, and then it got pocket carried for 6 or 7 years, so it's pretty much smooth.
Mm-hmm.
It started as a red Latigo, so that just that patina, the metal, it all kind of ties in. But so you were at the Arkansas show.
Yes.
Are you going to try and expand out to other pin shows, or are you selling online, or is that still so new that you're not really certain how other people can get some of your pin art essentially?
So I do plan to be at 2 other shows this year. My schedule doesn't really allow me to do a wide variety of shows, but I'm going to share a table in May with Sean Newton Pins at the Chicago show. And then I'm going to have a table at the Dallas show. And those
Okay.
are the 3 shows that I'm going to try to continually do annually and look for other shows to do like every 2 years or 3 years or something like that if a spot is available. You know, it's tough to get into some of these shows and I know that you have to go every year a lot of times in order to keep your spot. So um, I do sell online. I have a Shopify account. Like if you go to my website, every link will just take you to uh, the Shopify so that you can see the work. I need to do a better job on my website, have more information and things like that on there. It's just uh, so much going on that it's kind of difficult at times. But so they are available for purchase. I've been not putting more. Like I added like 4 pins to the shop about a week ago, uh, but I've been putting off adding more because I wanted to make sure that I had the nibs in to be able to accommodate um, the smaller pins that I have that I'm going to post. They take a block number 5 um, because I really do try to like listen to people when they come to my table and are like, "Oh, I love this pin, but it's too big." And so I'm like, "Well, what can I do to make it smaller?" Like I mean, there are some people that are like, I want a pin that's the size of a straw. And I'm like, whoa, how do you get nibs that small, Sean? Like, what do we, like, is this something to really look into, that type of thing? So, um, I've got nibs coming in. They should be in tomorrow or the next day. And so a lot of my smaller pins will be on the website uh, this weekend, beginning of next week. So,
Okay. Well, and that's one thing. I actually went to Sean's pen making panel on Sunday of the Arkansas show, and one of the biggest takeaways is the pin can only be as small as the nib unit.
mm-hmm,
That's and if for people who aren't makers, they don't tinker, they don't pull nibs and take it apart. That's something that can get lost for someone who's new. They don't realize that, the size of that screwed in nib unit, the section can't be any smaller than that,
mm-hmm,
you know. And then, but the smaller pin thing, pocket pins have been really popular now. And that's probably some of that. Now, have you done any pins that are eyedropper only, or are they mostly all cartridge converter at this up to now?
they're all converters. Right now, I can do Yovo number sixes and Bach number fives. Those are the two nibs that I can accommodate in my pins. The smaller ones are the Bachs. The more beefy ones, I guess you could say, are the Yovos. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think that's right.
I've heard Yovo and Yowo. It's one of those, everybody kind of says it slightly different, but you say a number six, Yovo or Bach, people know what you're talking about
Yeah.
in general. But an eyedropper would be an interesting thing too, because
Mhm.
that would really open up the art aspect, I think,
Yes.
because then you're not constrained by Yes, you have to fit the nib in the front, but then you
Yep.
can make it as stubby or as a different shape,
Yep.
something completely different. Because as
Mm-hmm.
long as you have enough of a reservoir for the ink to
Yep.
go in, so that would be interesting to see too. From the art standpoint, since you're making functional art that writes,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a cool way to do something different that
Yeah.
stands out. That's because already your pins like the so what do like the one Lisa got? It's called a twirl. Is that a twist? What would you call
It's
that?
called, oh my gosh, Tordre. I like French words, and I'm sure that I butchered it when I said that, but it's Tordre with the accent.
Yeah.
God, I can't remember. I took French a long time ago, and I like to say that I can speak a little bit of it and understand a little bit of it, but that's the lie. But I just like the words. As I'm like creating a pin, if it goes off in a different direction, um, what I'm thinking about as I'm making it is the name of it. And so, like, I'll just show you one. So, like, this is one of my later ones, and the as I was making this, I thought of ribbon candy, like the old
No,
Christmas candy that was in the,
yeah.
and so that's the name of this shape. This shape is
Okay.
ribbon candy.
It
Um,
looks like saltwater taffy.
yeah,
The way it's kind of stretched out in the
hmm
flats, it looks like
yeah,
the. If you've ever been to Gatlinburg and they have
yeah.
like in their main strip and they've got those saltwater taffy machines where they're spinning that's I can see exactly what you mean when you describe that.
So this is Tordre. It's a twist. It's one of the first ones that I made, just to kind of show you that like the model like can take on a life of its own. I'm going to show you another one. This one has the line, so it kind of shows the shape of it a little bit better than something else. But this is also the Tordre, and it has a twist that starts at the very top. See if I can get it in focus, and then it goes all the way down. So
Oh,
it's
that's really
it's all
cool.
about it's all about like what it's doing to fit inside of the model name. Um, so just another example, like this is my first one that I made that's called Tour, which is tower in French, like a loose interpretation of it, because this bottom piece, I don't know if you can see it, as I was making it, looked like a chess piece, like a rook.
Yeah.
And so that's where the tour came from. So you've got this one, it's kind of flat, got that end on it. But then you have the smaller one here, which takes the balk, similar shape, but not the end. The end, the cap is a little bit like more narrow at the tip and then fat in the middle and tapers down. So like it's a generalized shape in the same family type of thing. So
Oh, that's very cool. So you'll be at Dallas, you'll be at Chicago,
mm-hmm.
along with Sean. And that's great because, y'all do have the symbiotic relationship of sorts where he kind of got you into it.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're able to go share a table,
Yeah,
because his schedule is different than yours. So, whenever you're able to kind of share the drive of getting there and then
yeah,
share the table space, that's great because, um, I did have one other question. Now, since you're making blanks, you make them for yourself now. You make them, and Sean uses some. Are you selling blanks as well?
yes, they're available on my Shopify account as well. So like if you wanted a particular blank, like you wanted the glow, and it's called glow sticks, you wanted the glow sticks blank, you could purchase it, send it to any maker that you wanted. If you have one that you use a lot. uh, I'm still new to the community and how it works and everything, but there are some people that they have a maker that's the only maker that they'll buy a pin from, but they might like the blank, so they'll buy the blank and then ship it to the maker to have a particular pin made out of it from that maker. And they might have to wait 6 months to get it made, or a year, or that maker might be like, hey, you're my best client, so I'm going to make it for you now, type of thing. But so they're available for purchase. I've sold to um, Griffos pins, and oh man, I'm losing track of the names. I've got several makers that I've sold to at shows. My blanks are the pour is a little bit different than others, and the colors are slightly different, so they come out a little bit different, and so it just gives them like something to change somewhat,
Yeah.
uh, and it sticks out. Just a different look. I know that Sean has said several times. He's like, I don't know how many people came up to my table and said these blanks are just completely different than what I see at other people. So,
No, and it's almost at the point from the custom maker pin community. It's the people pouring the blanks are getting as well known as the people turning the pins, and that's kind
mm-hmm,
of cool because you're combining two artists' work into a truly custom piece. So you might have a D squared arch blank with a Sean Newton turn,
mm-hmm,
or because I picked up a pin from Magnolia at this show, and then the blank was made by Hobble Creek, I think, out of Idaho,
mm-hmm,
and like I know Lisa was talking about on her stream that she picked up a pin because it was of a blank of a maker she met in California. So it's a neat community that's very symbiotic of you know and that's something I like because I have a couple of makers local to me, Nick Pasquale and TriStar
mm-hmm.
Studio Scott Lewis,
Yes.
and I see those guys on a regular basis, and just seeing one time we were having coffee and Scott comes in with an entire tote of blanks
Yeah.
because those guys love their blanks and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
get blanks from anybody and everybody
Yeah.
because you never know when that motivation's going to hit them. I'm going to make a pin out of that one today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just sorting through, oh, hey, let me take this one. They're trading the blanks because that's going to open up their creativity and
Yeah.
options as well. So that's very cool, and it's great that people can get your blanks. Now, are you at the point where people can send you a blank and you could do your carving on a different maker's blank? Have you done that yet?
Um, so I just made a blank out of Starry Night resin that I purchased at the show. And so, yes, I can. It would just take a little bit longer because I have to work it in to getting the actual like block made so that I can carve out of it. And like I said, I work with Sean's schedule, like whenever he can work me in. So I might not be able to make blocks for my carving until, you know, June. So
Well, yeah, that's, I mean, if you think of Sean, I mean, his books are what, 4 years out, 5 years
yeah,
out. So, you
yeah.
know, it it's I think there's an expectation, and I kind of like it in a way that if you're getting something custom and it's not available at a show, you expect to wait,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and I like that. I mean, everybody loves the immediate gratification, but it's also, there's something when you're getting something quality that's handmade and it's going to last. At least for me, like I just
Yeah.
got my rickshaw bag. It just
Yeah.
arrived that I ordered the day after the Arkansas show. And here we are, what, 2 weeks later,
Hmm.
and it showed up. And it wasn't even a true custom. It was one of those like kind of pre-made, but they're still making it by hand, so they're not going to keep inventory sitting
Yeah.
around. So that's that's cool
Hmm.
that someone might have a blank, because you know I've seen people who are not makers buying blanks because once they find the maker they want to make a pin for a certain reason, they want it out of this blank regardless of who's going to make it.
Yes.
They might not know, but they know they want it out of that material, and that's
Yeah.
cool. That
Yes.
truly makes it a custom experience in multiple ways. Of you get to pick the blank, you get to pick the maker, you get to pick the style, you get to pick the nib. I mean, it's Legos for adults who end
Yes.
up with a functional piece of art they can write with. So,
Yeah.
as we're starting to wrap up, just in general, what's next for D Squared Arts?
Hmm. I mean, I really hope that I can start to develop more of a connection to the pen community. I'm new at it. I've been making blanks for about 5 years, for Sean and for other people sparingly. I've done the Arkansas Pen Show. Was my third year. I did Dallas last year, so it'll be my second time there. I'm hoping to, make the Dallas, Arkansas, and Chicago like annually, um, and just work to produce more pins like that I feel are things that one person will want, not necessarily a whole bunch of people, but like someone will pick it up and fall in love with the pen and be like, I love the way that this feels. Like, I love that you left the end of it rough so that I can run my finger over it as I'm writing with it, like, because not all pens cap or post, I mean. And so, like the interaction with it is the main thing. And so hopefully, I can continue to build my brand and go forward and have people enjoy using the pins. So
No, I think that's a great way to end it there. Definitely go check out the D Squared Arts website. Look at what Darrell has available now, because it really is functional art that you can write with. And you know, and if you once you see one in person, and I know that Lisa brought hers to the Pin Club. She had hers at the Atlanta show. She just posted a picture today on one of the discords I'm on where she got an iridescent nib from Kirk Spear and put it on your pin. I don't know if you've seen that,
I haven't, no.
but um, that it adds even more to the art of the pen,
Yes.
having that iridescent nib with that grind like you like. It's one of his scythes, so it's that kind of brushstroke emulating
Hmm.
Nagahara style. So that's the cool thing too. You can go get a pen from you. She has that work of art, and then she got a nib from a different maker or a different nib meister. So it's that full customization. But once again, thanks for taking some time to talk. I know I'm going to own one of your pins at some point. It might be Arkansas next year, it might be before, or I might just have to go find a blank and get on the books to have it made at some point in time. Because, like I said, I'm trying to get more to the maker pin side, but you know, you have to have that blank that's going to be the right look, or when you see something, then it's like, oh no, that's the one. And
Yeah.
once because that's one thing. The pin I got this year, while it was not one of yours, as soon as I saw it, I was like, "That's the pin."
Yeah.
There's a whole, multiple tables like, "Nope, that's the
Hmm.
one," and it's kind of that relationship. And someone left a comment on my YouTube video I did on the Arkansas show. They almost bought it, but they decided to take a walk around the room and see what else was there. When they got back, it was gone.
Yes.
So it helped them make up their mind of the other one they were going back and forth between.
Hmm.
So, when you're at a show, if you see one of Darrell's pins sitting on the table, pick it up then, because when you walk back around, it might not be there, because that might be the perfect pin for that next person as well. So definitely, get it while you have it in your hands, and then carry it in your pocket, give it some patina, put it through hell, so that you can come back in 10 years or the next year and show it to Darrell at
Yeah.
the pin show, and he can see that functional art as it's lived its good life and written who knows how many words on how many different papers to, get back to the analog nature. So, once again, Darrell, appreciate it. Um, be sure you can check out this. This will be on YouTube for video, and it's available audio only on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And until the next time, we'll catch you on the next episode.